Hello and welcome. Let me tell you about the logistics company today.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
Yeah, hello and welcome again to part 4 of this mini-series, Why Choose the German Demountable Flood Barrier? Strengths without the digging, I called it. And I will talk about logistics today. And so I hope that you have listened to the previous parts, 1, 2, 3. If not, you still can do so. Do so because they are already published. Just go to this podcast and check for the previous episodes of this flood protection secret podcast. Yeah, let me tell you about a logistics company I once visited in Southeast Asia. They had a massive loading dock. In a way, you can compare to the example of the Kenyatta Airport in Nairobi, Kenya, I mentioned and I described in the previous episode in part 3 of this mini-series. But now we talk about a logistics company, Southeast Asia, and they had a massive loading dock, always busy with trucks bringing in goods from the port, every minute counted, because in logistics, time is literally money, money, money. And when they decided to install flood protection, another supplier pitched them a system that required digging a trench across the entire entrance to slot the flood barrier into. At first it sounded simple, but when I walked them through what that meant in practice, they started to see the cracks in the plan. So a trench across a busy loading dock, that's a trip hazard for workers carrying boxes, a nightmare for trolleys and wheeled suitcases, and a high-heel disaster waiting to happen if such a trench would be installed in front of a 5-star hotel. But it gets worse, and over time trenches collect dust, dirt and sand. In many countries they even collect stagnant water, and stagnant water means mosquito breeding grounds. Think about that. In Brazil, they really fight the mosquitoes everywhere in Rio de Janeiro, or in Vietnam, or in Singapore, and of course in the Philippines as well. So stagnant water means mosquito breeding grounds. In places where dengue or malaria risks, that's not just unpleasant, it's dangerous. And in countries in the Middle East, the sand will clog the channel. In the event of heavy rainfall, the flood protection barriers can no longer be installed. And what about performance? Let me just add one sentence, one idea to this point in the Middle East. When I visited locations, whether in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Doha, and so on and so forth, I inspected many buildings, pumping stations, basement parkings, and whenever I saw these the drainage in front of basements, for instance, that is like a trench, a little bit bigger, of course. And it's not made to stack in demountable flood barriers. It's just a drainage with a grid on top. But in most of the cases, I would not say in all cases, I can say in all cases, yes, that I have observed and I have visited. There was so much sand inside, you could not see where the exit hole is. Where does it lead to? It was completely clogged. And the plastic was inside and so on and so forth. And I don't want to know what kind of dead animals were inside as well. Yeah? So in case of a need, that is good for nothing because it doesn't work at all. Yeah, so and what about performance? A trench does nothing to guarantee that the barrier can handle the water pressure during a real flood. If the anchoring isn't up to the job, the barrier will simply collapse. The result? A flooded building, wasted money, and a false sense of security. Why do builders use heavy-duty reinforced concrete for walls and posts? Did you ever ask yourself this question? Because those rebars and that concrete are there to handle forces. It's the same with flood barriers. Without a serious anchoring system, you're just decorating the entrance. And it's a very expensive decoration, by the way. That's why at Flood Control Asia, we don't cut corners. Our German RS technology uses M16, M20 or even M24 anchors for maximum holding strength. The Flood Control Asia German RS technology uses HILTI anchors. The same German, Liechtenstein, Swiss brand trusted worldwide in construction. If you've ever seen their bright red drills, you know they mean business. And the third point why Flood Control Asia and this RS technology is using these heavy-duty anchors are friction-welded anchor sleeves. In case we don't use HILTI anchors, we use anchor plates with friction-welded anchors. That is a high-tech process that bonds mild steel with stainless steel by spinning the parts under extreme pressure. And this pressure creates a rock-solid connection that can take serious water loads. Yeah, the best part? We install all of this without any ground trench. No digging for a trench, no trip hazards, no mosquito ponds, just pure tested strengths where it is needed. For that logistics company, the choice became obvious. They chose RS, the German demountable flood barrier. The next time the typhoon rains came, the water piled up outside, but the loading dock stayed dry and the trucks kept rolling. Isn't that great? I have a golden nugget for you, as usual. Perhaps some of you are waiting for it already. Here it comes. So flood protection isn't just about blocking water. It's about engineering strength into the system. With this German RS technology, you can get robust, tested anchoring without the downsides of a trench. Strong enough to stand up to the worst and smart enough to avoid creating new problems. So if you're planning flood protection for your facility, don't settle for a system that's only strong on paper. Yeah, connect with me. My name is Andreas Klippe. Some say Dr. Flood. I like that. And I share the proven solutions and lessons from real projects around the world. Include podcasts in your message, so I know you're one of our listeners. You will find the links below this podcast episode, by the way. And that's it for today's episode of Flood Protection Secrets. The first flood is always too late, and protect now and avoid costly mistakes like unnecessary trenches. I hope we will meet again in part number 5. Why chose the German RS demountable flood barrier? That's a mini series. And until then, stay safe and flood free. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with the new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe protect for you? Anytime? Worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.floodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering, German quality, safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.